You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome to the first round of Top 8 here at Week 2, Season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. My name is Truedawn, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host Bairdrus.
Hey everybody, and boy do we have a good top 8 for you guys today. We got some great players who have made it all the way through a grueling 6 rounds to find themselves in the top 8. We've got our man Moosh, who is on, let's check what deck these guys are on. We got Moosh on TJP Chalice. He's going to be up against Muggs for the first round of the quarterfinals, who is on Rakano mid-range. We have under that Ilya K, who is on TJP mid-range, up against Talindor, who is on Big Combry. On the bottom half of the bracket, we have Elunex, who is on Felon Control, playing up against Tiger HC on his Xenon Killers deck. And our final match at the bottom of the bracket, that's going to be our feature matchup, is going to be Tatsumaki versus with Big Combry versus Quins, who is on Rakano Plate. There should be some very exciting matches. Got a really good top 8 here today, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Once again, last week we had all individual decks in the top 8, no copies. This week we only have 2 Big Combry decks. The rest are individual. So just a wide open format here. Even this deep into the lifespan of this format is just really awesome to see. It's quite exceptional how deep the Direwolf Digital made the format.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a great format. We got a lot of diverse decks, and it should be really cool to see how these decks stack up and see who comes out on top. So we are going to jump into round 1 in just a moment here, folks. But before we do, allow me to go ahead and plug real quick. aReNGee Eternal, like when we run these tournaments, guys, we don't make any money off of this, and we support this all through the use of our Patreon, which is found at patreon.com/aReNGee Eternal. You can find us there if you feel that you appreciate the service that we provide you and you want to give us just a little something for helping out. We do appreciate it. It is the only way we support ourselves. Obviously, we don't run any advertisements or anything like that. We're currently not partnered through Twitch, so it is our only source of revenue. We do appreciate everything that you guys donate. It's what keeps this show running. So if you feel like donating, please go on down to www.patreon.com/aReNGee Eternal. You can find it there. We have goals on there. Obviously, I think our next goal that we're hitting is actually, I think we have Sunday tournaments now due to our goals. So congratulations to that, guys. We're going to have fun Sunday tournament. Yeah. But we're going to have those planned out and started up soon. So check us out down there. And now let's talk about this matchup a little bit, Truedawn.
Yep, and Big Combry versus Rakano Plate, pretty one of the stock matchups of the format, something we've seen a lot. One of the basic aggro decks versus one of the basic mid-range decks. Normally, Big Combry has a lot of game in this matchup, just as most other matchups, because it's very hard to get underneath them. Their creatures are just very stout, very early. So there are certain situations where the Rakano Plate deck could make a Voltron that they can't deal with, or just have a really fast draw. Their Combry deck stumbles a bit and get underneath them. But it's very hard to do that generally against a deck that is just all solid blockers, a couple harsh rule, vanquish. It's the stuff that Big Combry is bringing lines up very well against Rakano Plate deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Those vanquishes and harsh rules are going to be super key to this matchup. I mean, we do see Quins on the build of Rakano Plate that is actually playing less cards like Soulfire Drake and Deep Forge Plate and more cards like Ajin Imperial Armor. So with the Ajins in the deck, Vanquish and Harsh Rule stock goes up even further since they're going to find a ton of targets.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a cool build we see here. In Quincy does include the Silvering Familiars and Ajin Imperial Armorsmith. This is a card I've been trying to preach the values of for a long time. It is essentially just Rakano's Seraph, except the activation is 4. It's very hard to beat when it's in play for an extended period of time. And it's actually one of the ways to beat Combray, because they can't really deal with multiple creatures that just get too big. So we'll see if the Seraph ends up running our start of the game, or if answers come to it as we are stepping into the early turns of game 1.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are new for the first time, these top 8 matches are best of 5, which means that the players sideboard after game 2. So we're going to see 2 games unsideboarded and then 3 more games if necessary. And we see an early Tinker Overseer coming out of Quinn's here. Got the 2/2 flyer down, and with no immediate answer hanging out in Tatsumaki's hand. I mean, he has the Valkyrie Enforcer to silence it, but it's not gonna completely stop the unit. Probably going to be the line of play he's looking for here. That way he doesn't start taking a bunch of this chip damage in the air.
Yep, and the Tinker Apprentice is something we've seen Unearthly innovate into the archetype. He's been playing it over Crown Watch Paladin. Interestingly enough, in Quinn's deck, he's playing it over Rakano Outlaw, has Crown Watch Paladin in his deck. So actually, some changes being made between build on the 2-drop slot of Rakano.
Yeah, quite interesting. And Tatsumaki, unfortunately, just drawing power. I mean, he's got these findaways in hand as well, so primarily what he's going to be doing is just progressing himself towards the end game, but he doesn't have a lot of early interaction going on. The good news for Tatsumaki is that he's managed to build this 3/6 Valkyrie Enforcer that looks like it's going to hold down the board decently well, unless Quince has his own Valkyrie Enforcer, which it seems he does, and now he's going to be able to start pushing a ton of damage here.
And I guess it's good for Tatsumaki to draw that Mystic Ascendant. That is a good card, although it is going to not be relevant for a few turns. And every turn that Tatsumaki spends taking damage is not great. This 3/6 is likely to stay in play and hold down the ground, though. 3/6 is a very hard body for Rakano to deal with. So we will see if the Flyers can silence potentially, but they're coming through hard and fast with the Hammer of Might, 8 damage, and Tatsumaki is under the gun.
Yeah, absolutely. Would like to have seen the hammer actually applied to the 2/2, but I guess he's playing around Sandstorm Titan possibly here. Either way, though, I mean, there's a ton of damage coming in the air from Quinn's now, and Tatsumaki really doesn't have a lot going on. He's going to have to wait to put down the Mystic Ascendant, and that still doesn't interact with these units in the air. That only allows him to draw a few more cards. So in the meantime, Quinn's is definitely looking in a solid position.
I think I actually would have just played the Mystic Ascendant out naked that turn, because you need to have the mana for whatever you draw to like interact next turn, especially with this Soulfire Drake follow-up that is going to drop Tatsumaki down to 3, and he's actually just going to die due to the torch. So Quinn's with the blazing fast draw that we talked about can happen out of the Rakano deck, and just nothing the Combrei deck can do after stumbling a bit, drawing too much power.
Yeah, absolutely. 6-turn win right there for Quinn. So very quick matchup indeed. We're going to go to our second game pre-sideboard. We're going to see if Tatsumaki can recover from that, or if Quinn's is going to be able to run it back here.
Yeah, but I do think Tatsumaki's still a little bit favored in this matchup. The big Combrei deck just does a really good job of blocking and killing all the threats Rakano puts into play. But if you draws like that, if you draws like this, the one Tatsumaki's currently having, where you don't really have early stuff on curve, you could get run over. So
yeah, absolutely, you could get run over right here. I mean, Tatsumaki, his hand does look pretty solid here. Like, this is pretty good. I mean, you got Seraph on 3, you got Sandstorm Titan on 4. I mean, Quinn's is definitely going to have to find answers for these. It's entirely possible he will be able to take care of the Seraph, and hopefully he's holding a Vanquish in hand and take care of the Sandstorm Titan. Otherwise, he's going to get locked out of this board for quite a while.
yeah, and this is what Combrei does so well, is you can usually punch through like 1 or 2 creatures, but the thing is, every one of their creatures needs to get punched through. Every one of their creatures is something you have to expend resources to get through. So just going Seraph into Titan into Combrei Healer just puts a lot of pressure on their Rakano deck to have a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what Tatsumaki elects to do here. It looks like there's some consideration between the Sandstorm Titan, the Combrei Healer, and just passing and using the Desert Marshal as a silence. Does opt for the Sandstorm Titan. I kind of do like this line of play. It was my preferred line of play in this instance. Just get the Sandstorm Titan down now so you can weave together a series of casts next turn. If you pick up a power, you're good to go. If you don't pick up a power, then you can still make some plays with the Desert Marshal or the Comber Healer, and Tatsumaki gets rewarded, picks up an extra power. Now he'll be able to use the Comber Healer on his Seraph and then use the Silence during Quinn's turn.
Yeah, this is just going to be a big problem. And he actually elects to take off the Aegis. I don't hate that. 3-4 and 3-7. Largely the same thing. It does make you better against Finest Tower, and the Deep Force Blade actually still would have attacked through, but this is a little bit of a problem for Quinn. He can silence it to bring it down to a 6-6 without abilities, which he can chump block for a bit, or potentially even gang block if he's so inclined and loses Seraph.
Yeah, I think in this situation, you're just inclined to let the Desert Marshal go, not drop it, and just understand that you're going to vanquish it on the follow-up. Because, I mean, the vanquish here is very, very solid. And now Quinn's essentially got 2 for 1, although he was able to push through 8 damage. So, it's not the worst 2 for 1 in the world. But at the same time, Quinn's is going to have some very solid cards to reload with. And Roland's favor is not where he wants to be. Like, power, once you get past 5 power in the Rakano deck, you're generally way over your power limit. Unless this deck is playing Flame Blast, which it is not, then having an excess of 5 power is generally quite unneeded.
Yeah, you want to get to 5 and then stop is the dream scenario. But you don't have a lot. Once the Warcry chain stops, which has been broken up, the things you're top decking are just like 2/2s and 3/3s, and you really can't contest the kind of threats that the big Comrade deck is putting into play.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Quinn's does have the Valkyrie Enforcer, which is currently the top dog on the field since it can fly. But with the Seraph on the ground and the Desert Marshal in hand for Tatsumaki, not like that Valkyrie Enforcer is really going to end up going anywhere in particular. And this looks like a torch based on Quinn's mousing over it, considering whether or not he's going to throw it right there. Yeah, I'm inclined to believe that that's torch then. So curious to see how this one plays out as we move there. Or Groonhammer, a nice pickup for Quinn's. That's the type of card he's looking for. Although this Desert Marshal very likely going to come down and unfortunately take the blow.
Yeah, and now the Seraphs don't have a super great attack into this. The Valkyrie does, because we don't care about that card. But he does like to just alpha. One of these Seraphs will live, and the Orc Runehammer will go down. So I do like this. Gang blocks can take place. Then you have a 2/2 versus your 3/4 and 3/3. And you also have the option to deploy some owls that Tatsumaki just threw off the top.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll depend on what Quinn's last card is here, if he even has a shot at this game. Although Tatsumaki opting to drop an owl here, I mean, 4/4 is certainly the biggest thing on the board currently, and Quinn's doesn't have any way to interact with even 3/4s or 3/3s, so 4/4 is even more devastating. And he can get in with this 5/5 here and pressure some damage, but at the same time, I mean, he's taking 10 on the backswing.
Yeah, he's losing the race right now. I think Tatsumaki can just alpha attack and leave up the Scorpion Wasp, hang out. He doesn't even, even if he didn't have the Scorpion Wasp, Quinn's can't really attack. So just a very good spot for Tatsumaki. I believe this game is a lot more emblematic of how this matchup usually plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like you had said, I mean, not being able to get underneath the Combri deck is generally the downfall here, and Quinn's is going to have to concede. So 1 game apiece as we move into our sideboarded games.
Yep, and in the sideboard, Quinn gains access to some options like Finest Hour, Protect, Ruin, Vanquish, Copperhall, Bailiff, Silver Familiar, and Sword of Ikaria. The cards I like for this particular matchup are Finest Hour and Vanquish. Those allow you to actually attack through the large creatures, or a solid way to punch through. I personally think it's kind of indefensible to not main deck all 4 Finest Hour, but that's neither here nor there. Silver and Familiar is also a reasonable threat if you're inclined to bring that in, but mainly the interactive spells that lets you punch through the big things are the important cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Finest Hours are really generally important in the main deck, but yeah, just like you said, those are likely the cards we're going to see coming in. Out of Tatsumaki's side, I mean, I have to imagine we'll be seeing cards like Awakened Student coming in, Stand Together, possibly Healer's Cloak if he feels the need. But, I mean, there's not a ton of reach that you have to worry about with the Rakano decks. Unlike the Stone Scar Burn variants, there's really not a lot of Flame Blast and Obliterate walking around the corner. You really just have to dodge Soulfire Drakes. And given that there's only one in the entire 90 for Quinn's, I feel like maybe Healer's Cloak is a little unnecessary. Stand Together, Awakened Student, still very, very solid cards, though. Possibly even Decay if you really feel it.
Yeah, I think you can bring in some number of decays, definitely, making students contest the early board. Stand Together, I actually think, is a pretty bad card in this matchup. You're not really protecting a lot, and if you are, it's a huge tempo loss. Like, Protect I would like in this matchup because it does insulate you from Vanquish in a way that doesn't force you to leave up a million mana, but I think Stand Together is generally going to be too slow.
There's definitely some arguments to that, certainly. And it is a very slow card when you get down to it. I mean, 3 power in a matchup where generally the games are getting decided by about turn 7 or 8. It's not often that you're going to have 3 power to hold up. So we may see some Protects come in instead. Maybe we'll see some Protects swapped out for some Stand Togethers. Either way, we'll see in just a second what the players decide to do with their decks. I mean, you have to give the edge to the Combri player here, right?
Yeah, certainly. It's hard to, like, there's certainly ways their Recano Plate deck can win, as we saw in game 1, if the Combri deck stumbles, if they have a good draw. Like, the top 20% draw of the Recano deck beats, like, the bottom 40% draw of the Combri deck. But I think on average, it's hard to, like, just consistently punch through all of the creatures the Combri is presenting when they're all bigger than all of your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are moving into the early turns of game 3. And I mean, Quinn's does have a fast start here, and this is what he needs. And Tatsumaki may have a bit of power issues. He's bailed out there by picking up the seat, so he'll be guaranteed to play this Valkyrie Enforcer next turn. But after that, he doesn't have a ton going on. And a Silverwing Familiar, if there's a hammer next turn to go along with that, this could start to turn around very quickly in Quinn's favor. We'll see what Tatsumaki picks up. Picking up a power, very important here.
Yeah, this is the draw we talked about where Quinn just comes at the gates. The Valkyrie Enforcer does a really good job of blunting a lot of this. Although if Quinn has a torch or something to punch through it, then that's all kind of null and void. He can follow up with the Parliament next turn, so he does have stuff going on, but if Quinn can just provide a removal spell for these single threats a turn, he's just going to run over this game.
Yeah, and there's a Champion of Glory coming down, and we will probably see a Great Parliament Owl coming out. What's going to be important is if Tatsumaki can hit a 5th power. If Tatsumaki hits a 5th power, Harsh Rule is very likely cleaned up the entirety of this board, and Tatsumaki will be in a great position because he'll have most likely gotten a 4-for-1. And wow, he's even blocking around that.
Yeah,
He's
this is a huge telegraph.
Yeah, he's going to absorb the most amount of damage possible. Ooh. The Paladin's actually very important here. This leaving a 4-3 on the board after this Harsh Rule is going to be very big. And if he has any sort of equipment to go along with this, like a Deep Forge Plate and a power, I mean, this is game right here. Not going to be, but...
It doesn't look like he has full lethal, but he still has the 4-3 in play. Might be out of gas, though. It looks like he might just come up a little short. There's going to be a bunch of blockers in play. But again, Deep Forge Plate, Soulfire Drake are all good top decks at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what it's like when you're playing Recano versus Big Combri. It's a sprint. It's not a marathon. You're not playing a marathon. You can't last through a marathon. You have to sprint. And we're seeing Quinn's right now sprinting. And unfortunately, it looks like, as you said, he's coming up a little short here. We even see Decay picked up now. I mean, Decay is great insulation in this matchup. It's likely Tatsumaki is going to establish another threat this turn, but, you know, any subsequent turns where a Deep Forge Plate would get picked up and present a very nasty threat, that Decay will just take care of and basically ensure that Tatsumaki will be able to turn the corner here.
And that Deep Force Plate's a little too big. A base one he was fine against, but he's going to get a little punished for tapping out for this, and he has to actually block with both. He just has to double chump block. So he will be able to deal with the Deep Force Plate in the untap, but he can only either Ironthorn or Decay, not both, unless he draws a power.
Yeah, if he draws a power here, he'll be in a good position.
Oh, that's not bad.
Vanquish will help out, certainly. Yeah, Vanquish is going to look good here. He's still on 2, though. I mean, he is dead to a Torch top deck at this point. Like, we are in the stage of the game where it's very, very easy for Quinn's to close it out. Like, when he was at 5, not having Obliterates and Flame Blast in the deck, you kind of feel like that's maybe a little too far out. Only 1 copy of Soulfire, but there's 4 torches in the deck. He can rip one of those at any given time.
Yeah, and it's going to be a while before Tatsumaki does turn the corner, so Quinn's is probably going to get lot of draw steps from here to then. Although the Seraph is certainly going to cut that clock down.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately for Quinn's, an equipment's not going to be good enough here yet. And in fact, this is going to put him further out of range. And now we're staring at a Soulfire Drake or bust. And it's not, the odds are not great for Quinn's. He's only playing one Soulfire Drake in the whole deck, so he's essentially gambling. And there's a possibility he even took Soulfire Drake out due to the amount of answers Combry has for Soulfire Drake. I have to imagine that he would leave it in, but there are a lot of people who do take it out in this matchup. There's just too many silence effects.
Yeah, it doesn't interact particularly well with specifically Desert Marshal, so it's defensible to take out. Also, getting a 4/4 flyer off Seraph does insulate Tatsumaki from the Soulfire Drake. You can just leave that back and not die to the Drake by itself. You need like Vanquish or something additional. So it's Tatsumaki should be able to present lethal in probably like 2 turns, I think, depending upon what the Seraph hits. And it hit something pretty good.
Yeah, Mystic Ascendant's very good here. I mean, this is going to be lethal next turn. So unless Quinn's is holding a torch currently and rips another torch, this game looks like it's going to go in Tatsumaki's favor.
And that goes to show you kids why you always hold your power until after Seraph activations. So there's a lot of empower creatures to hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And Quinn's not able to find it. There's Tatsumaki getting 2-1, has a slight lead. We're going to be going into game 4 here very shortly. Let's see if the players are ready to go. Looks like the players are, so we'll be queuing up again. And I mean, Quinn's did everything he could that matchup right. I mean, I didn't disagree with any of his lines of play, any of his attacks. I mean, he did everything he could, but he just came up short there.
I mean, you could argue that Silver and Familiar not being card that is good came up in that matchup because it was a 3-mana 1/1 that didn't do anything, but that's my personal grievance, I guess. But like that does come up when the Silver Familiar isn't able to get any pants or anything, especially in this combo matchup specifically. Even if you're able to go Silver Familiar into Hammer of Might, you can't even attack the Sandstorm Titan, and you like trade with the Parliament token. So that card is definitely a liability in this matchup.
Yeah, it certainly is a liability. I mean, I do have to agree with you there, but playing with the cards he had, I definitely think he played the matchup right. It just came up short there at the end. If he had only had another torch, he would have been good to go. And Quinn's getting another shot at being on the play. Tatsumaki not with a fantastic hand early. He's definitely going to be susceptible to a lot of this early aggression. And if Quinn's can rip off a couple of nasty threats here, this could be a very devastating game. But missing a drop on turn 2 is too costly, I think, for Quinn's. And seeing that harsh rule in hand now, if Quinn's starts flooding the board, I mean, turn 5 is just going to be a slaughter for Tatsumaki.
Yeah, definitely. It's just usually living the harsh rule is the name of the game in the Comrade deck. And this doesn't Marshall blunting things early is a big deal. He has the Iron Thorn and the Mystic Ascendant to turn the corner once stabilized. Sword of Akari is decent here unless the 2-1 attack again, but Quinn needs a lot of help.
Yeah, absolutely. He was going to need a lot of help in this matchup. We're going to see if he rips a hammer right here. Yeah, okay, so hammer will get him on the right track for the time being. I mean, this does push 5 damage. It's very likely with Tatsumaki, not picking anything up off the top of the deck. He's going to go down to 11 here. It's just about if Quinn's ends up overextending on the board. It also depends on if he has It depends on if he has a Protect to go with this. And he does have 1 power-up, so if he does have the Protect, he might just get out of this situation. We'll see, though.
And there is a pause. Oh, never mind. It might be Torch or something.
Yeah, it looked like a pause for a second, but unfortunately not going to be it. We do see Valkyrie Enforcer coming down. I mean, Valkyrie Enforcer's not terrible, but Sandstorm Titan picked up is just going to stall it out.
And being able to leave the Desert Marshal up here is really good because he gets to develop the Iron Thorn, but also be insulated from stuff on the Valkyrie Enforcer. And aReNGee is actually a pretty good card, especially because it just immediately puts us on, and now a chump block is going to be necessitated.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see the block here. And now actually, this is very interesting. Like,
And this is what I'm talking about with aReNGee. aReNGee gives you the ability to win games you would not otherwise win. And we see that the top deck of the Desert Marshal there is going to save Tatsumaki. But if he didn't try to answer that aReNGee, he was just in like insane trouble. He's still even in an okay spot because he still has 2 giant creatures.
Yeah, this is really weird because the aReNGee is so big that, like, normally I'd agree with you. aReNGee is a very powerful card, but in this situation, it's just absolutely insane because aReNGee itself is just a 10/9, and that's just going to soak up a chump block. Like, it's going to force a chump block here. And, I mean, this is crazy. Like, Quins is very likely going to have one of these giant units left on the board at the end of this combat.
And Tatsumaki definitely playing around Finest Hour, not just blocking with the 8/8, blocking with the Iron Thorn as well for free. Just in order, because if you got Finest Hour there, it's just an insane blowout.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say how this game is going to go because, I mean, Tatsumaki, like, I have to give the advantage still to him because he has this Mystic Ascendant, and then he's going to be able to play the Sandstorm Titan.
Yeah, I certainly think he's advantaged, but like the aReNGee, the fact that it even came close is a testament to like how insane that card is. If Tatsumaki didn't draw the Desert Marshal when they drew Desert Marshal, they get to plate the Valkyrie again and even make any subsequent creature they draw relevant. It's too much to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the matchup, like, Tatsumaki's at 11 power. Like, he's playing multiple threats a turn. He's drawing multiple cards. I mean, even the aReNGee just isn't going to be big enough here. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it looks very much like Quins is going down. He's not going to have the reach. Like, unless Sandstorm Titan doesn't get played and Quins happens to be holding Soulfire plus Torch, but Tatsumaki picked up Protect, so that's not even a line anymore. Like, I don't think there's any way out now at this point for Quins. Tatsumaki is firmly in control of this game.
Yeah, as long as he plays a flyer now, even like Soulfire Drake Torches, or I mean, not Torch, Finest Hour would be away, but now he gained a life, and now that's not a thing. There's also flyers now with the owls.
Yeah, this is just over. Unfortunately, yeah, it's too late in the game. Quins needed to close this out a lot earlier, and it just didn't happen here.
Yeah, you have to get underneath the Comrie deck. You have to at least try. If the game goes this long, you're just not going to have a good time. And we do see the honorable Sudoku committed by Quins. Although the Orc number won't let him, it makes him immune. So Tatsumaki does take the series, right? Was it 3-1?
Yes, Tatsumaki takes the series 3-1 with Big Combri over Rakano Plate, which is unfortunately not too surprising of a result. I mean, it's kind of what we were expecting altogether. I mean, I thought there were multiple games, like the last game and this game, I definitely thought Quinn was going to be able to put up a good fight and probably or possibly even take the game. But it just never came together for him. I mean, he was so close, and it just didn't end up coming. And that really does feel bad when you're the Rakano Plate, because you're already unfavored, and being able to see the finish line. I mean, getting Tatsumaki down to 2 health in game 3 and just not quite getting there, it's soul crushing.
Yeah, it's just an uphill battle. I certainly think there are ways that you can build Rakano, specifically like 12 one-drop versions of it that are potentially fast enough to get underneath Combray. But generally, when you're trying to do stuff with Silver Familiar, slowing the stuff down, trying to build Voltron, the Combray deck really doesn't care about that. They just have a lot of ways to kill a Voltron card, and some of their cards are just bigger than a lot of your creatures plus equipment. So it's just very hard to make any headway in that matchup. And we do actually have a backup match on the other side of a bracket between Ilya K and Telendor. Ilya K is currently up 2-1 on Time to Spiral Midrange against Telendor's Big Combray.
Yeah, and we are jumping into this game in just a second, folks. Loading in real quick. And yeah, this is a very interesting board state. Talendor looks like he's got the better board, but at the
He's in
same
a
time,
precarious 5 life.
yeah, exactly. He's at 5 life, and I mean, these 2/1/1s could sneak through at any point. I mean, if Ilya K rips an obelisk here, it's a lot of damage he could push through.
Especially because Telendor is being a little bit aggressive, wants to start chipping him with these flyers, which I'm inclined to agree with, depending upon him having a follow-up, which he does into Sandstorm Titan.
Yeah, Sandstorm Titan looking pretty solid here, and Ilya K just picking up a power. We'll see what happens, but I'm starting to think this game is going to go to game 5 here.
It certainly does look like that Telendor has stabilized the board. It's going to be very hard for Ilya K to break through at this point. His deck's not really equipped to do that. He does, I believe, have Crystallize. That is certainly a way out of this.
Yeah, I mean, Crystallize is his primary way out. Like, he only has to sneak through 5 damage, so it's not impossible, not even close. But it's definitely not looking great right now.
Yeah, to be fair, Talendor's Mystic Ascendant is silenced, so he doesn't really have inevitability. He can't really attack himself yet. The 6/6, I guess, is fine. It does trade with the 5/5 or just get through for 6, depending upon what Ilya K is inclined to do. So Ilya K does have some time. He does have chump blockers. He has live draws, so this is still certainly anyone's game.
Yeah, it definitely is anyone's game. I mean, Ilya K certainly has some live draws to get out. He's got a lot of power he's sitting on right now. There's definitely ways for him to win. And Talendor is kind of sitting on the back foot right now where he's just going to be waiting this out. Like, he is in no position to just turn the corner. He definitely has to wait and find threats that are bigger than Ilya K's and find ways to answer the board. Talendor doesn't have the luxury of a Crystallize like Ilya K does. He can't just lock the board down and board swing for the win at any point, which is something that Ilya K actually does have. And, another Mystic Ascendant for Talendor. This is very good. These are the kind of threats he needs. He needs to be cycling.
Yeah, this is actually a source of inevitability for Telendor, which is really important in a board state like this. It will allow him to draw into something like Martial Ironthorn that can break the stall. Also, Ilyak has allowed himself to get chipped down a lot in order to try to keep his board state. So now he's going to have to start chump blocking in the face of a lot of these large creatures, specifically the 6/6. So now Talendor is drawing 2 cards per turn. So the game's getting out of hand quickly, but Ilya K probably has another turn or two to draw to Crystallize.
Yeah, he will be able to find a Crystallize still in the coming turns. I mean, he'll lock so many of the threats down, and like we said, he only needs to push 5 damage. Like, the goal is within his sights. He just has to find the play to get there, and we'll see if he can manage to rip something. Sandstorm Titan's not bad. It helps stall the board. I mean, Ilya K really just needs like a Seraph or just something at this point. Like, desperately needs some way to lock down these units. Otherwise, I'm not sure. I mean, Obelisk is almost good enough, right? Like, he almost could win if he pops an Obelisk.
2 attackers, actually, Obelisk is just lethal, like, assuming Telendor has nothing. Now it's not. But it would have pumped the 2 Yetis enough to get through. That False Prince is pretty good, just as a trample threat, also making Obelisk a better top deck. So Ilya K is drawing live, but again, this Mystic Ascendant drawing 2 cards per turn, providing inevitability for Telendor, drawing to Martial Ironthorn, stuff like that. Ilya K is running out of time.
Yeah, he is running out of time very quickly, although his board is bigger.
Yeah, Telendor can't attack either. Like, Telendor needs to find a Martial Ironthorn, and if his Martial Ironthorn is like pretty deep, then that gives Ilyak a lot of time to come back. Other cards in Telendor's deck is like Great Parliament. If he can deal with both Sandstorm Titans, he can chip through with the Flyers. There's certainly a lot he can do with the resources he has, and he does see that his Sandstorm Titan is a liability currently, and he's inclined to attack with it. And I'm actually surprised to see Ilya K like trade it off. I think he wants that in play. I would have just probably bounced with both Titans and like done whatever I could to make sure I don't die to these Flyers, making it as hard as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do as much as you can here. Ooh, Stand Together. That's it doesn't really catch him off guard, actually.
It makes the Titans both die.
Yeah, it just makes the Titans trade off, and that's really important actually for Talendor more so, because now these birds are flying, and that presents lethal by itself.
Yeah, and we do see that instead of just bumping, which would have resulted in either Talendor's Sears Titan living, keeping the birds on the ground, now LAK is just going to alpha, and actually, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blockers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is this lethal?
Yeah, I mean, it's
3 get through, right? I mean, assuming that Talendor is nothing, Talendor could have something in hand.
5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'm counting 4 damage getting through, right? Depending on what the overwhelm looks like. But then, yeah, with the stand together, that's 4, so that should be 7.
Because there's 5 blockers to 8 attackers, so 3 get through, and that means like minimum 6 damage. Oh, that changes. Well, that actually doesn't really change anything.
Yeah, this doesn't. I don't think Talendor has anything.
Yeah, Desert Marshal you would have played before block. Same with Wasp. There's really not any other speed cards that I can play. So it does look like LAK is able to sneak through these last points on like probably the last turn that he had.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here, and it looks, that is going to be the lethal damage. Wow, so Ilyake manages to survive. Wow, I mean, that was exactly what he needed. I mean, yeah, 3-1 win there at the end.
That was his final turn. He was going to die in the air to those flyers. He had one more turn to top deck, either Obelisk, Stand Together, or Crystallize, and he got one of them. So
yeah, he got exactly what he needed in that situation. I mean, it's just what we were talking about. Like, there were a few outs in his deck, but they weren't a ton. He had to hit it right on time.
And it's good. He used his life total as a resource very early on to maintain the creatures in play, and he needed every single one of his creatures, even all the little 1/1s, in order for that attack to be lethal. So recognizing you're ahead by a bunch, that you can take damage in certain spots, paid off for LAK, managed to maintain as much of his board as he could, and it paid off on the last turn and got him the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, just coming down right to the end. I mean, you always have to play to your outs, guys, and that's an example why. I mean, right there at the end, he still manages to bring it down. So very impressive out of Ilyake. He will move on to the quarterfinals. How many of our results do we have in at this point? Let's take a look.
We have all of them. We have it's going to be Mochi against Ilyake and Lunex versus Tatsumaki. So we will be bringing those games to you guys after a short break here, and we will talk about those matchups when we get to them. So stick around for that, and we will be back shortly for the semi-final round.